Of the show for today. The guest is Dr. LMadu, and the issue is the growing economic influence of China in the Caribbean. During the first segment of the show, Dr. LMadu gave us some information in reference to the interest that China might have dealing with some of the smaller countries in the Caribbean. And of course, Dr. LMadu, let's see if we can pick up where we left off the last time and allow you to expound upon that.
You know, during the Cold War, United States, Britain, and some of the other Western countries, you know, we are pumping in money into the Caribbean. Not just because, you know, they love to, but to keep up the Russians. You know, during the Cold War, a lot of money was being spent on different countries, depending on what they believe in. So since the United States saw the Caribbean as our backyard, you know, we had to make sure the Russians don't come in there. So one way to keep the Russians and Chinese out is to make sure, you know, we pump enough money into the economies to keep them as a loyal member of the United States group or British group, you know. So what happened since the Cold War ended, you know, the Russian threat has been removed. And of course, China wasn't much of a threat during that time anyway. US, British, French, Canadian, Dutch investment has completely gone down, thereby affecting the economies of these countries. You know, basically the United States and Britain subsidized the economies of these countries in the Caribbean. But since the Cold War ended, this has completely gone down. So the Chinese saw an opportunity of moving in. The same way they saw the opportunity in Africa to move in, because when the Cold War ended, a lot of African countries weren't getting as much money as they were getting from the United States and Britain and France, you know, to keep the Russians out. So
no Russia.
Exactly, no Russia, so no threat to be pumping money to them anymore. So their own economies also started going down. So China saw the opportunity, moved in. So the same thing they are doing in the Caribbean now. They saw that there's a vacuum that they can fill. So that's what they're doing now. Let's look at some of the investments. In Bahamas, they've invested about $2.4 billion.
In the Bahamas?
Yes, to build a 3,800 room resort in the Bahamas. And this will be built by about 30,000 workers. And almost half of those workers are going to come from China. See, at times, the Chinese don't put money in the economy, even when you think they are. Because half of those workers, even 30,000 of them might come from China, because that's what they do a lot of times when they, you know.
Not only do they bring their money, but they also bring their workforce and their population to settle in a real sense in that area.
Exactly, and pay them so that the money is still going back to China. In a way, exactly. So they will have about 30,000 workers coming and do that. They're investing $600 million in Suriname to build a deep, you know, harbor, port. In Dominican Republic, they're investing about $470 million in a resort called Punta Pele, you know, to revitalize it. In Guyana, they're putting almost $100 million into the bauxite industry to buy part of it. They're building the Prime Minister's, you know, lodge in Trinidad and Tobago. In Dominica, which with a population of 83,000 people, they built a $17 million cricket stadium for them, okay, and a $122 million grant aid to them. So all over, all Caribbean countries have benefited one way or the other from Chinese investments, and almost all the Caribbean countries have had cricket stadiums built for them by the Chinese, whether it's St. Kitts, St. Lucia, you know, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All these countries have, you know, Chinese money invested.
It seems there's a lot of recreational kind of money, Dr. LMadu. I think you're talking about hotels, resorts, casinos, and et cetera. And all of them are not only being built by Chinese, by China, but also in a real sense by many Chinese workers that will probably stay there once the building has been done and take up residence. And so the Caribbean is almost an outpost in a real sense, if this has been going on a long time, of China.
Absolutely, and that's why the United States is kind of getting concerned now about that competition from China. And that's why people are asking, what does the Chinese, what do they want in the Caribbean? Because there's no minerals like in Africa.
They've got everything. They've got the country, they've got the population, they've got the land.
That's
what
correct.
Else could they what else could they need?
That's correct. But there's a driving motivation behind it all. One should remember that there are two Chinas. You have Taiwan, formerly called Formosa, which is the Republic of China. Then you have the People's Republic of China in Beijing. Okay? Both of them claim to be the legitimate government of China. Now, after the Second World War, when the United Nations came into being, the government of Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, which was the legitimate government of China before it was overthrown by Mao Zedong and settled in Taiwan, was recognized as the legitimate government of China, and they had a seat in the Security Council. Okay? So the People's Republic of China, with the largest population, was not recognized by the United Nations then as the legitimate government of China. Okay? So most countries recognized Taiwan as a legitimate government instead of Beijing, because the United States prodded them, and Britain and all this to recognize Chiang Kai-shek's regime, even though they're in Taiwan, not in mainland China. So after President Nixon's visit to China, you remember the ping-pong diplomacy with Henry Kissinger and the rest. The United States recognized China.
The opening of China, I think it was called.
Exactly, yeah. The United States recognized China, followed by Britain and Russia and the other countries. So after this recognition, China was admitted as a member of, given a permanent seat in the United Nations as a member of the Security Council, and Taiwan was removed from that seat. But meanwhile, a lot of countries still recognize Taiwan. Okay, so there's a diplomatic war started between China, which is now the legal representative, and Taiwan, which used to be the legal representative.
Okay, of course, Dr. Madu, let's take this break, and of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.